Hi guys, my name is Andrew or AZ. This is the lesson number one of the best audio production and music mixing courses. After 11 years of teaching, I fully updated it. Each week I create 100 minutes lesson. On every Monday and every Thursday of each week, I release 10 minutes video for free. Those parts are real parts of that exact 100 minutes lesson of that week. Subscribe and check the list of my videos. Learn from free videos twice a week and use these free videos as a real example of what full 100 minutes lesson you can buy of that week. And then you do it each week. Read the description or first pinned comment to understand how to buy any full 100 minutes video lesson and for more details. Just one exception just for this week. Lesson 1 is for free, so you already can buy in advance lesson 2, full lesson 2, without waiting for the next week. Remember, due to my success, I was under attack of the haters. They tried to cancel me by using hateful posts and deleting all supporting comments on their controlled Reddit forum. I give you a link over there to a video where I explain how I busted them, who I am, my credits, verified reviews, and Q&A on my course. Some haters even pretended to be me. I ask you to trust on the things you can see by yourself from my videos and their description. This is me. This is my knowledge. And this is exact product I offer, educational audio engineering material. My product talks for itself, the description and the first pinned comment. In a modern busy environment where you don't have enough time, I strongly suggest you to check this first half of this lesson. Second half already will be dedicated to the very first, actually simple topic, but you will be surprised how much you can learn from even this simple topic. My course is based on the principle of critical thinking approach and real audio engineering. For example, a lot of people think that to get great results, you need to really just copy some settings of famous audio engineers, or you need some super advanced and unique software, or new gear you need to buy, or you need some tutorials how to mix hip-hop or how to mix in Ableton Live. It usually doesn't work, or it just works temporarily, and then you come back to this sort of situation where you kind of lost. Okay, let me show you an example of critical thinking approach. For example, you think you want to copy some famous audio engineer. There is a famous audio engineer called Lord-Alge. He has this very strange approach. He boosts high frequencies all the way up, and everybody was like, oh my god, how you do it? Unbelievable, what's the point? I try, it doesn't sound good. But Lord-Alge say, like, don't be scared, just boost all the way, be brave, you know what I mean? If you just copy somebody's idea, it doesn't mean it will work for your mix, because there are 100 other nuances which influence this particular high frequency boost. For example, the biggest secret of Lord-Alge, he absolutely forget to say to anybody that his output is very dark. You can boost any amount of highs and it will not be too bright or too thin or too shrill. You know what I mean? For example, his console 4000E is pretty old console. He has 1985 4000E, which was soldered to be like in other specification of G specification. But anyway, this console has this natural roll-off on the top. Plus his output sound dark like in advance, and all your movements actually don't sound as bright as you think. In fact, on his output, he has Pultec equalizer, which processes the whole song, universal audio Pultec just to represent Pultec EQ. So what he does really, he set up 60 cycles over here. It's a shelf filter. SSL has long-going shelf filter, which means if you set up 60, it means it influences even frequencies like 200, 300, 500, not only lows. He boosted pretty a lot. And then instead of boosting highs, which would be the most typical idea on the master bus when you boost lows and highs, he boosts actually upper mid instead of highs, and just a bit. He chooses 3K, upper mid filter in the broad mode, and he boosts just up to 2 position or something. It's much less than lows boosted. Eventually his frequency response, let's imitate frequency response of his mix in advance before he start boosting high frequencies on individual equalizers. A lot of low boost, just a bit of upper mid 3K boost, and actually high frequency has a roll off in his system. Now imagine you absolutely don't have this frequency response in your mix, but he has this frequency response. Now, if he uses SSL EQ, individual SSL EQs, in this case it's a brown knob, but he has black knob, but it's quite the same thing, quite similar thing. So I'm gonna use a couple of plugins. It's not necessarily the best plugins to represent SSL, but just a couple of examples. It's Plugin Alliance Brainworks, Universal Audio, and let's say Console One Softtube. If he now boosts all this high frequency shelf red band all the way up, what he really does, he basically adds up additional highs over here, but it will not be crazy boosted. First of all, because it has already natural roll-off, which means high frequencies actually will not be boosted. It will be just a bit more to upper mid, which will raise up these frequencies to those previously boosted low end, which were boosted in advance. So he will have more or less balanced lows and highs. But if you're just gonna use your mix, your DAW, where you have by default frequency response in any DAW is like flat, like this, and then you apply his suggestion 15 decibels boost, it will be crazy frequency response. Your mix will sound thin, small, and shrill. Right? Critical thinking approach. Another example, it depends on equalizer you use. Over here, as you can see, it's SSL 4000 EQ. You know, analog SSL equalizer has crazy tolerance. I have this equalizer over here, as you can see on my table under my hand. Rupert Neve, do you agree about tolerance in analog equipment? Because you're a godfather of analog equipment, right? If you have one SSL console, you have 8K boosted by 15 dB on each equalizer, it will not be 8K and 15 dB. In fact, one EQ can be 5K when it's selected with the 8K, other EQ can be 10K when it's selected with the 8K. One EQ can be not 15 dB, but due to tolerance, let's say just 14 dB, other one 16 dB, and so on. So that's why we don't know what equalizers Lord-Alge has. And when you use these plugins over here, you just should realize one simple thing. We don't know what kind of tolerance Lord-Alge has. For example, this plugin from Softtube, which were by default with their previous Console One controller, which I had back in the days. I set up 8K, I boost high shelf by 18 dB, as you can see over here. But you know what? How much I really boosted here? 13.7 decibels. I measured it. So on the plugin it says 18 dB, but in fact it says 13.7 only. So you never know what equipment somebody uses to really claim it would be your strategy because you have different equipment or different plugin. Another situation, let's say the same guy, Lord-Alge, says boost high frequencies. The thing is, each shell filter can be completely different from EQ type to EQ type. For example, it can be different EQ. For example, from Rupert Neve. Rupert Neve EQ has so-called resonance shelves. If you set up high boost, even with the same frequency and the same decibels amount, it will boost high end, but quickly will go down and even cut some amount of upper mid, which make it darker and smoother. It will be sounding with the same settings. Let's say boost highs all the way up. This EQ will sound completely different. It will cut even mids because you boosted highs all the way up. On SSL 4000E, shell filters have slow going sort of behavior, which means when you boost 10K, you think, yeah, I boosted just like high frequencies above 10K, right? No. You boosted actually 10K almost as much as 5K and pretty a lot of 3K, 2K, even 1K. You know what I mean? So you're gonna make much sharper and much more aggressive sound with the SSL EQ in comparison, let's say, to Neve 1073 or something like this. Okay, another example. How about Andy Wallace, mixing engineer, right? Famous mixer. Let's say you know these master bus compressors, right? Let's say even SSL master bus compressors or any type of master bus compressors which glue the mix together, like they say. You kind of want to know how some famous audio engineer would set up master bus compressor. This plugin now called Native Bus Compressor 2. Actually, I was official tester of first version of this plugin when they ported it from Duende to native. So they gave me this plugin. We as a testers kind of tested it, made some suggestions. To be honest, I don't think they really listened to what I suggested, but technically speaking, I related to this plugin a little bit back in the days. So this plugin, for example, has attack time. Attack time is how quickly your compressor starts working, right? When something exceeds the threshold. So Andy Wallace preferred to smooth everything out, like to make everything silky and smooth, no matter what's going on in the mix. That's why he suggests to put attack at 1 millisecond, which is considered to be classic setting for 1980s. And you set up, let's say, this setting seems like it's the best approach, right? Don't listen to Andrew, listen to Andy Wallace, who like one of the most known engineer of all time, and probably he knows better. So you set up 1 millisecond and your mixes don't sound clicky and punchy. Your drums have transients. So in the mix, your drums, play important role, which means it just jumps up like this, kick and snares and so on. With 1 millisecond attack, when those peaks exceed the threshold, it will influence all these parts and it will kill actually these clicky parts in the beginning of kick and snares. So your drums, which you're eager to make more like punchy and defined in the mix, can be totally smoothed out and you don't hear those like details in the sound. For your mix, potentially, maybe some other setting can be much better choice. What kind of choice it can be? It can be, let's say, 10 milliseconds attack or 30 milliseconds attack, you know what I mean? But you just go after Andy Wallace. The question is why it works for Andy Wallace. It's exactly the same principle which I said. You just don't consider all other many nuances. For example, Andy Wallace maybe doesn't care about kick and snare because he will apply extra samples to... He mixes mostly acoustic drums, guitar music, right? Acoustic drums, let's say. So maybe this punch in the beginning of kick and snare, these clicks, maybe not as important as EDM. And you mix electronic music. You just take somebody's suggestion, you apply it and it doesn't work for you. Andy Wallace's smoothed out drums may be not actually without any punch or without any click. He would apply special samples which he blends to really recorded drums to make it like more punchy, you know what I mean? Those samples are so defined and so transparent in detail that drums will sound anyway punchy enough for him. But you don't plan to blend samples, let's say, to your drums. Or you don't have exactly the same samples like Andy Wallace has, at least, right? So that's why maybe suggestion of 1 millisecond doesn't work for you. That's why I teach you molecules of the audio. I teach you how to see the sound. The sound is just simply 3 words: phase, frequency, and amplitude. Amplitude is volume. Let's put this Lord-Alge example, which I deleted from the screen coincidentally, sorry. So let's say I'm gonna put these 3 words which you just really should master. It's phase, frequency, and amplitude. So instead of saying in those criteria like, oh, famous sound, famous techniques, famous audio engineers, you should think like, like mathematician, you know what I mean? You should be much smarter than this. Let me keep my text on the screen because I'm gonna save a lot of time in this way. Very important to understand these advantages of all processors. A lot of people always think for some reason, this plugin always improves the sound, this strategy always improves the sound. Actually, no, it's never like this. With improvements, you always pay with something for it. You always bring disadvantages as well as advantages. And the biggest secret to bring as much as possible advantages with the least disadvantages which anyway you bring to the table. This is the secret of audio production. So my offer is, when you know what to do in each real situation, instead of just asking somebody on some forum, you know what I mean? Maybe these guys who make those suggestions don't even know anything. Maybe they have completely different goals, maybe they sell plugins and by kind of giving you suggestions, in fact, their goal is just to give you a plugin to buy. You know what I mean? So my point is, I like to know everything by myself. In any situation, I know what to do. And this is what I teach. When you know exactly what to do instead of asking somebody. This approach gives you 3 benefits. Benefit number 1 is just cheaper. You buy less plugins, less equipment, and get better results. Secondly, is confidence. Confidence is very important. Imagine you wake up in the morning, no matter what you do, you always know you will find the best solution to any situation. And obviously you get better mixes. Better recordings, better mastering, and everything. This course has a lot of my own inventions and my own techniques and approaches. And actually it's not just like bonus, actually it's one of the most valuable parts, because sometimes those approaches actually beat traditional approaches. I never force you to believe in something. I show you multiple different views on the same situation, like we collide different theories with each other to find proper solution, like scientists. Biggest thing what I like is when you apply something, it doesn't work, and you find out why. This is the top end. And also, I don't like to hide behind different sayings like, oh, this mix doesn't sound good because we still don't have mastering. We apply some polishing and it will be good. I don't care if it's the same genres. If it's like pros, if it's mastered versus unmastered song. We just compare the best mix you think the best mix is in your mix. And without any excuses, you need to make sure it sounds similar. One of the most typical statement in reviews of my former students, it's a system very crafted. You probably will watch at some point my Q&A video and you will find out how I became an expert in teaching and everything. And as an expert in teaching, I realized one important thing. If you just have 2 hours video or the whole course with 100 classes, 10,000 minutes. Crazy. You will never find anything in this amount of information. It's not just enough to collect some videos. It's important to make some short notes, and this is how you create memories. So during the class, I always gonna type in real time with you like this on the screen some notes. If a person didn't watch all 100 minutes, those notes will not make any sense for them. But if you already watched, let's say 100 minutes class fully, and you have this short notes, I create specific so-called memory trigger. You reread those notes and then you remember all 100 minutes of that class you watched before. It's even better if you take a empty notebook and make those notes with your hands. It would be the best technique for education. But maybe you're absolutely against writing, then you can type. Of course, you're probably gonna be lazy like everybody else, right? So it will be at least enough if in the end of a class, you just print screen the full text of the class. Today it's introductory class, I don't put too much. So you make a print screen and you save it on your computer. Then you reread it when you need it, and you remember the whole 100 minutes. Of course, I understand you're eager to learn at least something, so you can skip first hour of this video, but I strongly suggest you, if you're serious about audio production, watch this first hour. You will learn approaches which I know as an expert in teaching after 11 years of teaching non-stop for your own benefit. Or skip half of this video and go to the first topic. When you buy 100 minutes lesson, you pay for main topic of it. And 20% in the end of this video, it's extra topics. It's like bonus for free for you. Actually, these topics crazy important in my opinion. You can say, oh, I don't need microphones, preamps, who cares? I just only want to learn mixing or something. I guarantee professional audio engineer need to know everything about everything to even improve those most important subject they are interested in. So as a bonus topics, in the end of classes, we're gonna have topics like studio setup, tuning of the vocal, arrangement, microphones, preamps, recording techniques, sound design, etc., etc. It will be crazy, full-blown course from A to Z on all subject of audio production. If you think you don't need some subject, it only looks like you don't need it. This course is created like a puzzle. All little elements, topics, subtopics, they all come together and it will be full-blown system for you from A to Z. Maybe you're gonna feel like, oh, it's a routine, I need to do it every week and stuff like this. I definitely recommend you not to give up because it's exactly the process. Again, I'm not insist on it. Maybe 2, 3, 5, 10 lessons on some particular subject. So this suggestion is not for you then. My main approach that each lesson should give you real value. That's it. Each class has fundamentals and advanced stuff, even some of earliest classes, So that's why it's really important to understand. It's not only about like last classes of the list. A couple of first classes will be just a bit less advanced, let's say, than other classes, but at the same time, it doesn't mean they don't have advanced parts. Actually, we're gonna go to one of the coolest topics called studio setup and panorama already, starting with class 2, but absolutely crazy stuff we're gonna learn since dynamics. Questions. I already included all answers to all questions to this course. How I know your questions? Because I was teaching for 11 years. 9 months course, 9 months course, by 9 months course, like people and people and people, like questions and questions and questions for 11 years in a row. So almost all questions will be answered by the course by itself. Also, I ask you to respect my product, my course. It has copyright. Don't forget about this, please. Sometimes I will be readdressing some subjects to other topics, because when you explain topic A and suddenly you need to mention something about topic B, there is no point to switch from topic A fully to topic B. Sometimes I will be saying something like, wait for topic B, it will be there and there. But anyway, my point is, in the end of the day, you're gonna get all the answers you have. The problem with educational materials on the internet, they show you perfect sources. Stamps. When you work with something with what already sounds good, you play jokes. You know what I mean? Because no matter how you process it, it already so clarifies, so defined, so balanced with each other, those instruments, and you can apply something, you decrease something, you increase something, and it just looks good, and everybody like totally fooled by this approach. Instead, I try to really challenge myself, and to be like, I really want to prove to myself I really understand what's going on. That's why I never use perfect projects. During this course, I will be using different projects with absolutely not perfect sources. They will be muddy, unclear, too many instruments, like thin, small, boxy, and so on, or too much ambience, or dirty, or too saturated. But exactly in those projects you really learn. The recommendations I give you, I will put them in the first pinned comment. It's very important where I explain why you should learn like week by week. Also, it's not enough just watch what I do on the screen once a week. It's very important that you open your own DAW, your own projects, and you try to do the same thing what I showed in a video. If you don't do it, in 3 months, you finally will try something, you will be completely confused, and you will gonna complain something like, oh, I didn't learn anything, or something like this. I saw it so many times. The only real thing how you can learn, always try to do the whole thing, always try to do the same thing I did this week from this lesson in your projects, the same nuances, and then you're really gonna learn them. Also, there is a principle of people who know too much. They just sit and saying, I know it, yeah, I don't need to do it because I know it. And then 3 months later, guess what? You can answer by yourself, right? Also, very important, what I realized after many years, you need to learn everything in audio production. Because tomorrow you can do something else. If you need to mix EDM music today, in 2 years, maybe you're gonna go to work for TV broadcasting company and you will need to know something completely different, If you learn from A to Z, it doesn't matter what you do, FOH engineer, recording, mixing, mastering, instrument playing, music producing and stuff. You always ready, I'm gonna give you a couple of examples. Let's say if you don't know recording, you don't know how to mix. For example, let's say your client recorded a guitar. When they record a guitar, they really try to achieve something. If you don't know anything about recording, you will never be a good mixing engineer. You're just gonna consider their guitar something like, yeah, this is the balance, this is muddy, this is bright, let's change this, and you will not understand what they try to do. They change everything they try to create, and they will hate it. So you're not gonna be hired again as a mixing engineer. Another example, if you don't know how to mix, you make mistakes during music producing, music writing, For example, you choose the wrong tones on the instruments, you choose strange rhythm, you put all instruments in the same octave, and eventually you cannot mix it well. If you don't know post-production, where I am originally from, right? I was a senior audio engineer for State TV and Radio Broadcasting Company of Ukraine for 10 years. And according to state classification, I received first class audio engineer. So, what I know about post-production by my own experience, if you don't know how your music will be sounding on the radio or how it can be used under the DJ voice, you will mix it incorrectly. Also, you never set up synthesizers properly. You set up, let's say, too much saturation or saturation in the wrong place or wrong type of saturation, and you just literally make more complicated mixing for yourself. Also, if you don't know mastering, you don't understand what your mix will get when it will be processed during mastering. So when you know mastering, you know how to mix, to like prepare your mix for the mastering. So what I'm saying, you need to know everything. And last thing before we go to the first topic, which I give you completely for free. I don't focus on a special DAW. You as an intermediate audio engineer or beginner, you can be afraid of like, oh, these guys show everything in Logic Pro like I show over here, right? Also, I use Cubase, maybe sometimes I will show something in Cubase. And you can be like afraid of maybe you need to learn something like from other DAW, like from the guy who shows the same thing but in Fruity Loops or FL Studio. I mean, what I'm doing, I never focus on specific DAW. I show you how to understand all DAWs. They exactly the same. And I never use two specific functions of DAW, so everything I show will be exactly the same implemented in absolutely any DAW. I don't even use built-in plugins, almost no built-in plugins. I use always third-party plugins, so those plugins can be working in any other DAW in the same way. That's it. So don't worry about DAW. I definitely make sure you understand what I'm doing and how to do it in your DAW. My simplified way of using DAW, it's not even just because of you need other DAW maybe. It's actually more effective way of using DAW. That's it. It's just for the better sound and better workflow. Absolutely last thing. You're probably curious. So what's next? What we learn on the lesson 2, 3, like closest lessons to this one? I definitely gonna tell you this. First of all, as a bonus topic, we're gonna start studio setup since lesson 2. It's amazing. It's absolutely crazy topic. It will be going and going for some time as a parallel topic. So mixing and mastering topics in the beginning of a class, and last 20% is a studio setup for at least first maybe a couple of months. It will be very cool topic. I'm gonna bust a lot of myths. We're gonna learn really real deal physics, which for some reason nobody knows, so-called boundary effect. We actually gonna bust theories from one of the biggest studio monitor manufacturers, which I have over here on the table, called Genelec. In my opinion, their approach is completely wrong, so I'm gonna show you exactly the proofs why. I don't mean their monitors are bad, I mean their approach to acoustics is wrong. Also, I never push you in the direction like what to buy, what to use. I show you, as I said before, multiple opinions on the same subject, and you can make your own decision. This topic is not really separate. Mixing is studio setup, and studio setup is mixing. It's like a car with a steering wheel and the wheels. It cannot be just a car just with steering wheel without wheels, or just wheels without steering wheel. You know what I mean? Actually, very effective way how to understand any mixer. I cannot really talk too much about this, it would be too long, but it will be a really cool topic, I guarantee. We're gonna learn it in the beginning of the lesson 2. Also, we're gonna learn quantization. So what's exactly going on with your waveform in the digital domain? Like if you need to raise sample rate, bit depth, and all those things, you know. First major topic is panorama. And it's not just left and right. You wouldn't believe how many crazy subtopics in it. Like absolutely unique approach called arranger rules. It will blow your mind. I guarantee panorama topic is amazing. Absolutely something what you don't expect from topic like this. And after panorama, we're gonna start first absolutely mind-blowing topic and really long and really from A to Z topic on dynamics. Whew. It was long blah blah blah, right, guys? We're never gonna have long blah 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 anymore. It's only for the first class, because when you plan to have 100 classes, let's say, you really need to create some special strategy. It's very simple but very cool topic actually, and you will be surprised how much new stuff you can learn from seems like very obvious topic. Check it out. Audio chain. You can apply it for EDM music production, for FOH engineer when you organize audio for concerts, for 1970s rock recordings. You mix hip hop, it will be exactly the same chain. First thing, which not always there, but commonly it's a microphone. So microphone goes first. Let's say it's a condenser microphone, side view like this. Microphone has a cable and it goes to what? When I ask people what goes next after the microphone, a lot of students give not wrong, but a bit washed out answer, which is a mixer or audio interface. You should understand the mixer, it's a bunch of other devices. Like on this mixer, you can see a lot of modules: preamplifier, line amplifier, dynamics, which contains compressor and expander gate, then low cut and high cut filters, then EQ, then sense, then small fader, then big fader, then panorama, and matrix on the top when you set up routing. Audio interface is exactly the same thing. It has preamplifiers, it has headphone amplifier, it has line outputs. Microphone preamplifier has multiple inputs. It can be instrumental input, line input, microphone input, with different resistors and different impedance. It can have a word clock to synchronize all the routing around the audio interface. It can be digital inputs, analog inputs, and so on. It's not just device called audio interface. Audio interface, it's a box full of different other devices. So my question is, what actual device goes next after the microphone? And in this case, of course, it's a preamplifier. First question is, why you even need preamplifier after the microphone? Actually, instead of the microphone, you may have guitar pickup. Bass guitar pickup, electric guitar pickup, acoustic guitar pickup, and so on. So it can be, instead of the microphone, going to the preamplifier, let's say, to the instrumental input. Both devices, microphone and a pickup, it's outdated, old technology. Usually these devices have very low output. They are very quiet. That's why you need to preamplify the signal. You don't make it like too loud or too quiet from your monitors. You just make it more like technical boost before you even start considering what volume you use. It's called preamplification. Preamplifier, we have an amazing topic about preamplifiers later as a bonus topic somewhere in the middle of a course. But now preamplifier make quiet signal to the loud signal. By the way, just bonus thing for you, Do you know why actually you need preamplifier? You potentially can record something in your DAW and then you can preamplify it basically digitally, right, over here. And let's say after recording without preamplifier, your vocal will literally be looking with this crazy low level. It will be almost like horizontal line for your DAW. So the question is, why not just to boost it digitally like this? The level of recordings can be minus 60 decibels. Maximum is 0 on the digital dBFS scale, which means full scale. So minus 60 dBFS, or simply minus 60 decibels. Then every piece of electronic equipment has a noise floor. It has noise created by transistors and transformers and cables pick up interference and everything like this. So noise can be easily minus 80 decibels, minus 80. And when you boost digitally from minus 60, let's say, to 0, how much you need to boost if your level is minus 60, but you need 0? It would be 60 extra decibels to boost. But these 60 extra decibels will be applied to the noise as well. And noise will be not minus 80, but minus 80 plus 20 equals minus 20. Because I boosted, as you can see, plus 60 decibels. Of course, you don't need to boost to 0. Let's say you boost to minus 20. People have this... we're gonna have this nice talk about minus 18 decibels theory. People say 0 dB VU, or let's say 0 dBu, and which is minus 18 dBFS. So let's say you need to boost to minus 20. So from minus 60 to achieve minus 20, you would apply plus 40 decibels boost. As you can see, plus 40. Yes, your signal will be good, it will be minus 20. Your vocal will be minus 20. But noise also gonna raise by 40 decibels. Instead of minus 80, it will be minus 40. And minus 40 in the mix, it would be crazy obvious. You're gonna hear this noise. If you record multiple instruments or multiple voices, it will be noise on the noise on the noise. They amplify each other, they sum up, and noise will be even louder. It would be absolutely impossible to listen to. And for 2025, your sound, and for modern sound, your sound will be like completely noisy, you know. Even recordings from 1950s, less noisy actually than your recording. That's why you need preamplifier. Preamplifier works as a resistance. It basically resists, it applies impedance, which is resistance, and it doesn't allow the quietest parts to go through. Only louder peaks allow to be boosted. This is how preamplifier works. A lot of people think preamplifier has main goal to color your sound. It's nonsense. It's not nonsense, but it's not the main purpose of preamplifier. It's just a bonus extra feature of preamplifier to color your sound. In fact, first of all, it doesn't allow the noise to be boosted. You know, it's just boost main signal only. So that's why you have preamplifier. Next, after preamplifier, what you have, yes, you may have some processing and stuff. By the way, notice I exclude from this chain any questions about electricity. Obviously, each device needs to be powered up by cables to the power socket and stuff like this. We kind of for now ignore it. We're talking only about signal chain. So after preamp, you have a converter called ADC. It's an analog digital converter. ADC. So roughly speaking, it takes electricity waveform and converts it in a digital information which eventually will be stored somewhere on your computer. Again, source where it's stored, digital information, we're not gonna include over here. We're talking about only virtual signal chain. So we take this waveform and we convert to digital information, abstractly speaking, 0, 1, 1, 0. You know, like digital data. That's it. After converter, which can be, by the way, built in your audio interface, and probably is, then you go to DAW, where the signal will be placed and can be processed and transformed, adjusted in volume and stuff. So a lot of people really mix up a couple of things over here. People think that mixer of DAW is somehow like vertical representation of what's going on, and workspace like this one is horizontal representation of what's going on, and it's not. Absolutely each DAW has two major software. First major software, it's so-called, I call it digital recorder or tape machine, but not tape machine, but digital machine. You know, let's call it digital recorder. What it really means, back in the days, people recorded music on the tape. So it was looking like this. Let's say this is the tape over here, right? You have on the tape, let's say, some number of tracks. You have kick track, snare track, vocal track, guitar track, synthesizer track. Then this tape will be going to the tape machine head and physically touching the machine head where all these channels will be read by the tape machine head. It works like this. Basically, this tape will be going through machine head, and everything will be synchronized. Kick and snare and vocal and bass, they all will be in time like they were recorded, because this like physical synchronization of the tape machine head and tape. You know, nowadays we use absolutely the same approach. Nothing new were invented. It was just imitated by digital. So basically you have a module which looks like this. A module. And we're gonna call it digital recorder, right? Before it was analog recorder, now it's digital. Digital recorder. Digital recorder contains, or differently speaking, sequencer. It has multiple instruments. Let's draw it like some instrument, some other instrument, some other instrument, some other instrument. And those instruments just synchronized. we have a digital cursor which is going through those waveforms. When I press play, time cursor go through these waveforms and all those waveforms synchronized. DAW mixer is actually the next software. You should definitely consider it as a separate device. You can say something like, but I can see some parameters which is related to the mixer on the screen. It was done just for your convenience. This panorama over here, it's actually not a part of tape recorder, not part of digital recorder. And this volume controller is not a part of a digital recorder. Yes, it has its own volume adjustments by manually changing volume adjustments, as you can see, like this, like this. I do it with the gain just to process the waveform itself. But when it comes to the fader is this thing, or this slider, which is also the fader. Software engineers just took a fader of the mixers of the second software and included to the screen of the first software, which is called digital recorder. I'm gonna explain it clearly. Check it out. So mixer is the second software. So we say it mixer. Before it was analog mixer, now it's digital mixer. Do you see where I'm going? Tape machine where everything is synchronized and those instruments go to particular channels of analog mixer, right? The same we have in the DAW. We have digital recorder where instruments synchronized like sequencer. And then when you press play, this first instrument go to the first fader of the mixer, where there is controls like panorama, faders, you can put some plugins to process it, right? Then you take the second and you throw it to the second channel of the mixer. That's why these horizontal things, they are not called channels, they are called tracks. Like on tape machine, they also were called tracks. So this is tracks, this is channel. Track number 1 goes to the channel number 1. Track number 2 goes to the channel number 2. Surprisingly, a lot of people don't understand it. You know what I mean? Sort of, it's like water pipes in the mixer, right? Signals go through those water pipes like water go through the water pipes. Eventually, they all go to one major water pipe where everything is blended. It's called master bus. Let's call it as a big fader. Big fader, usually on the right side of the mixer or something like this. And all those small faders and those instruments will be sounding like final song. And you can control volume of the final song with this big fader. These two modules, I'm gonna use dotted line to square them. It's actually what we call DAW. What happens next? Where signal goes next? To software of your audio interface, very commonly. It all depends, of course, of manufacturer and stuff, but consider it as additional volume adjuster and routing device where you can send signals farther. Let's call it position X. I'm gonna explain why in a second. Then signal obviously goes to converter. It's called DAC, digital analog converter, which means new sound in digital domain, which is 1110, will be converted back to analog waveform, to electricity. So it will be another waveform. Right? And then signal leaves audio interface. I can square now these 4 modules over here, which potentially can be your audio interface only. All these 4 modules actually, it's a part of your audio interface. Not always. You can use external preamp like I have Neves and or here SSL, and it's in my Studio B. We're actually gonna have video sometimes from Studio B, sometimes mix between Studio A and Studio B. I use Studio B mostly for recordings. I use over there external preamps. I can use internal preamp of audio interface. That's why we square it over here. Converters nowadays are parts of audio interface. Actually, I can use external converter outside of audio interface. I have over there SSL channel strip over there, third one from the top, LA to A1176 and SSL alpha channel. And then it goes to some device called Y. We already have some special device called X. I'm gonna come back to it in a second. Now we have some special device called Y. And then signal goes to monitors, studio monitors, which play the sound in your studio. Right? For example, it can be just passive monitor, which doesn't have amplifier built in. But let's be honest, if you go to any music store nowadays, the chances you're gonna find monitors without amplifier is like 5%. So most of studio monitors nowadays, they have active electronics. So amplifier built in your your monitors. So that's why on the side of the speaker, I'm gonna put little square and I'm gonna put 3 letters, amp, which stands for amplifier, which means it can be some volume booster inside of your monitor. Now, to understand all this and to understand X and Y, I'm gonna give you absolutely amazing suggestions you may not know. Let's describe what position X is and let's describe what position Y is. So position X is a digital, because it's a part of audio interface software. It's a digital passive attenuator. In my notes, I call it digital passive circuit. Let's actually call it like this. Let's put in brackets, it's a part of audio interface. Part of audio interface. Audio interface. After the DAW signal goes here, and I can make it only quieter before it goes to my monitors or to any other places with the cable out of my audio interface. So that's why it's called passive. If it's active, I can amplify the volume. But just because of it allows you only to decrease volume, we call it passive circuit, but digital. It's a digital attenuator. Why you need it, I'm gonna explain in a second. Then let's explain what position Y is. Is analog passive circuit. Monitor controller. Monitor controller is a special device which allows you to connect multiple monitors to your audio interface and then adjust overall volume, let's say. Famous devices is like Mackie Big Knob. Nowadays a lot of companies make products like this. I personally had a Radial, but it's discontinued by the way. It's called MC3. They claim it's a passive, which means it doesn't allow you to amplify. And the question is, why you don't need to amplify? Why you need only to decrease? The problem is, never have 2 amplifiers in a row. So we're gonna put it as a rule. Never use 2 amps in a row, right? Let me explain. For some reason, if somehow you have, let's say, amplifier inside of your audio interface or outside of audio interface, then it goes to studio monitor with another amplifier. Each amplifier is like extra pepper or salt. Imagine you want to eat some potato. You put a lot of salt. It's already too salty. You're like, it's salty, you know. And then another kind of bunch of salt. And you're like, oh my god, it's too salty. The same principle over here. You already have, with a chance of 95%, you have amplifier in your studio monitor. That's why you don't want anywhere else another amplifier, because it will be double colored. Your music can suck. It may sound not so good, but amplifier usually make it like more colorful, more interesting, more juicy, and you may think your mix sound actually better than it really is. That's why you definitely have to have at least 1 amplifier. Unfortunately, you know, it would be better not to have any amplifiers, but it would be too quiet signal from speakers. That's why you need to have an amplifier, but with the least amount of coloration. That's why to get the least amount of coloration, you need to have just 1 amplifier only, not 2. That's why when they sell these devices, like studio monitor controllers, they make them specifically passive, not to have extra coloration. So you not always actually use Y. You not always even have these devices, but if you have, they should be passive. That's why, as you can see, position Y is analog passive circuit. The same reason why digital passive circuit is passive, because you don't need some amplifier to boost, to overcolor your mix. That's why no matter what you use, Y or X, or both X and Y, it can be possible to have the same, both things in one system, obviously. You only want them to decrease your volumes, not to overcolor your mix. Okay, I hope it's clear. You don't need extra coloration. That's why you need to have only one amplifier. That's why any other volume adjustments should be passive. That's it. Now it's not everything. Listen to it further. Now what I want to explain. First of all, I need to bust some myth. Analog passive circuit never flat. They lie to you. They say all these devices super transparent, they don't do anything to your sound. It's simply impossible. Any extra piece of the cable, any extra device in a chain, it has resistance, output resistance on the line output, line input resistance to the device. Cable itself has capacitance. It always influences your frequency response and maybe even dynamics to some extent. So what I'm saying, even though yes, they not overcolor your sound, they still influence your sound at least a bit. So what I'm gonna say over here, we're gonna bust this myth. We're gonna say even passive analog circuit changes the tone anyway. And we're gonna say myth busted. What if you complete purist, you a person who want like ideal sound, which is impossible by the way, but you perfectionist, right? Like me, for example. It's actually disadvantage. It's not advantage of a human being. If you're perfectionist, it's your weakness. But anyway, you a perfectionist and you don't want to change your sound in any way. What you gonna do? You need to use only X passive attenuator, which is built in your DAW. So that's why we're gonna square this Y module, which means you can exclude from the chain. You not necessarily need it, right? Now you need to decrease the signal on the output of your audio interface. Then it goes to the converter, then to the cables, and just go to the amplifier over here. It will raise the volume and monitor sound loud, you know? Now another interesting part. The most useful suggestion, very important suggestion. But before it, I'm gonna quickly explain one thing. The question is why you even need to drop volume on your audio interface. Maybe you're gonna say, what's the point? I mean, I just send signal to the audio to the monitors and I'm gonna just make signal quieter on the monitors. Unfortunately, sometimes it's impossible. We're gonna say some monitors sound too loud. Sound too loud. Example, Class D amplifier. For example, on my table, even these crazy expensive monitors called Dynaudio 47, which cost roughly like $5,000 for the pair, these ones, right? They have Class D amplifier, which means you cannot make them quieter. You can make them quieter by sensitivity switcher, but only to some extent. Anyway, in their lowest setting, if you send signal from your audio interface without any adjustments, with its natural loud volume, these monitors will blow your ears, you know what I mean? It can be too loud in your studio. At least I'm not a fan of listening music too loud. I try to keep my ears fresh for the long period of time. If you're gonna listen to loud music all the time, your ears will be less sensitive to nuances of the sound. So as an audio engineer, I try to keep my ears as perfect, as young as possible. So I never listen to music too loudly. You know, that's why even to the lowest levels they will be too loud for me. That's why I need to adjust the levels on the audio interface. I make signal quieter on the audio interface before they even reach the amplifier of these monitors. So basically we're gonna say, so we drop down the level on X position, right? And then it will be anyway boosted by the amp of the monitors. What the best suggestion I can give you in this case? My suggestion is this. Make sure your speakers set up in their quietest settings or reasonably quiet settings. You can say, but whatever, I can make these monitors as loud, you know, like you crank up speakers, amplifier start to work all the way, you know, monitors like like a stadium sound. I am exaggerate, but stadium kind of volume. Let's pretend stadium volume, right? And then you just make output on the audio interface with this slider like very, very quiet. And it's a problem because if you make on the position X signal is too quiet, pretty quiet level will go to DAC. So DAC, it's like a resolution processor, you know, it has resolution. If you send to DAC pretty like super quiet level, it will convert it to electricity with a bit lack of details. You know what I mean? Again, maybe I exaggerate a bit, but it will be just at least a bit lack of details. And then signal, this is the biggest problem. Signal will go through the cable. Cable can be long. In your studio, you can have a lot of interferences, RF interferences, you know, magnetic, electromagnetic fields, which is actually a real problem. A lot of people really underestimate this problem. I had actually serious issue with this in my studio. As the level going through the cable is too quiet, too quiet, it's bombarded by loud noises, loud interferences. So this overall sound will be polluted by the noise. And then it will go to your crazy amplified monitors. And as amplifier has high settings, it puts more harmonics, more dirt, more coloration. So you get only disadvantages in this case. You get lack of details on the AC, a lot of noises on the cable, and eventually too much coloration from amplifier of the monitors. Instead, what I suggest you to do, completely opposite approach. You use loud level, at least loud enough level, on your audio interface on the position X, this digital circuit. In fact, it's not circuit, but it's a digital attenuator. Then it goes to DAC with enough details. Then it goes not too quiet through the cable, so all those electromagnetic pollution, RF interferences and everything, it will be much quieter than the signal itself, so it will not really spoil your music. And then it goes to amplifier with the lowest volume on its amplifier, which means its amplifier will not gonna try to overpush the volume, which means it will apply less coloration, less noise. It will be much clearer working, and then monitor just sound with the right level. So we're gonna write it down. It's cool, right? I'm sure a lot of people don't realize this principle. So we're gonna put it over here. Again, today we have very simple topic. We're gonna have so cool and so advanced topics, much more advanced topics than this. But as you can see, even from this simplistic topic, we can learn a lot of important things. We're gonna say, set up the amplifier of the monitors to their low sensitivity settings. Let's say if you have a switcher on your amplifier like sensitivity minus 6 dB or 0 or plus 6, always choose minus 6. If your monitor has 88 dB, 98 dB, 102 dB, 112 dB, don't choose 112. Put it at 88 dB sensitivity setting. Then set up the amplifier of the monitors to their lowest sensitivity settings. Adjust the volumes just on position X. I remind you, position X is written above what it is. It says in our text over here, it says position X. It's a digital passive circuit part of audio interface. Basically, it's a software of your audio interface. Like over here on my audio interface, I drop down this slider and I can change volume of my monitors. I want quieter, I put the slider down. I want it louder, I put the slider up. But my speakers set up in their lowest sensitivity settings. So it will be much clearer signal. So we're gonna say it over here why. Better noise, less coloration. More levels for DAC. Because don't forget, if your monitor's crazy cranked up, you need to decrease the volume on position X so low that levels will be so quiet going to DAC, to digital analog converter. Actually, it's quite cool. If you look at this chain and you can say, yeah, maybe this chain works for some situations, it works for any situation. Imagine this. You record hip-hop. This is your mic, this is your preamp, ADC, so it's part of your audio interface. You put rap vocals on a digital recorder. You listen to them through the mixer, and that's it. And you use monitors, no matter if you have some passive circuitries or not. Another example, you, FOH audio engineer, you organize sound for the gigs. There is some artist on the stage, right? They have microphones. Those microphones connected to preamps anyway, even if it's wireless microphones. Then signal go to some converters, because nowadays everything digital. Then it goes to some digital mixer over there. You can even record them on the side for those stems. After the gig, they can pick up those stems and mix it, whatever, make live albums. Anyway, you use some digital sort of a mixer to send signal to PA systems for the crowd. You know, you make different instruments with different balance, UEQ and stuff like this. You send then after digital mixer with DAC to large speakers of PA systems, large subwoofers and stuff. Okay, how about you, electronic music producer, and you don't record, you don't use microphones, you just use software synthesizers, samples, you create a beat. The same thing. No mic, no preamp, no ADC, but you created digital virtual instruments, you bounce them to audio files. You can even leave them as virtual instruments, synthesizers, no need to convert them to audio. But anyway, they use sequencer to synchronize all those sounds. Then they go through the mixer, you put plugins, you change volumes, and you listen to your mix with studio monitors or headphones instead of studio monitors. Amplifier for the headphones are passive devices, and amplifier will be built in your audio interface. As it doesn't need to be too powerful, it can be built in the audio interface. Let's say now is 1950s, Abbey Road Studios, and you record somebody before the Beatles. You have a microphone. Paul McCartney performed to U47, they have preamplifier. There is no digital technology yet, so no ADC. Then it will be recorded on a recorder, but not on digital recorders, just recorder. Then they have mixer, not digital mixer, but analog mixer, TG console. Actually, 1950s Abbey Road, before the Beatles era, they had red console, like tube-based console. Or let's say it's mid-60s and you record Beatles on TG 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, MK4 console, so-called, or Pink Floyd. So you record it here. Or you record Tupac in 1995, you know what I mean? It will be analog mixer, SSL mixer. Then it goes, there is no digital converter. Then they have some passive circuitry, maybe just amplifier separately, and separate passive monitors without built-in amplifier. As you can see, it works to any situation. Now you know any situation by just this simple picture. Print screen, as I told you in the beginning of in the first half of this video, how to use those notes or print screens of my lessons. First class, of course, the most simplistic one, so we don't have too much notes over here. But anyway, as you can see, audio chain topic is pretty important. How to buy a full lesson 2, information in the first pinned comment and in the description. Or any lesson and read information about everything, how system organized, how to participate free lessons twice a week. I hope you enjoyed this lesson as I enjoyed teaching it today. See you later, bye.